we're still coming together. We're still coming together in the way that we know how, the best way we know how. We're still together. What Hebrews says, don't forsake the assembling of yourself together. And so this is the way that we don't forsake. This way we're still speaking life and speaking courage into each other, meaning we are still encouraging one another. Last week, Jimmy spoke an incredible job at don't just go through it, but grow through it. So after the second service, I went home, and my family, they were all eating already. And so I went and took my place, and I sat across from my mom. Hi, Mom. Hope you're watching. My mom, and she was beaming. I memean, she was stoked. And I looked at her, I had some church. That's what she told me. She said, I had some church. And I said, Mom, you never tell me that when I preach. Right? Mom, she said, I had some church. And I was thinking, my mom, she's 70. She's a young 70. She's 70 years old. She's never done church online. She's sitting in her room, on her couch, and she is leading her own heart to have some church where she connected with God. And how many of you know, I mean, come on, let's just admit this. It's going to take some self-leadership right now to lead our hearts to God. I mean, you just can't float and go by default. You're going to have, we have to rise up and lead, but I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of flex some leadership muscles on ourselves and to learn how to lead ourselves and not be, church is great, but not to be dependent upon church. And sometimes you got to do like David did. You got to speak to yourself. You have to sing songs to yourself. You got to lead yourself to God. And I hope the worship has encouraged you. I hope that my message, I'm super excited about sharing, but having something stirring up within me all week long about this time together. I hope that this encourages you, but let me encourage you to encourage us. You do that by joining in the chat and giving some encouragement, and encourage those that are online as well. Speak to the people that are online, because it's just a good word will never fall on deaf ears. And do this for me. Hit share. If you're watching by Facebook, hit share. That's the easiest way for you to share your faith right now. You can share the good news just by tagging on share, because we have a viewer that watches every Sunday from Colorado, but she chooses to share every time she watches. And I think it's 3 weeks ago, someone that was on her contact list started watching and sent in a next step card, right? Is the next step card? A next step card. Sometimes I call it different things, but next step card. And now she wants to be a part of our online small groups. So you never know what you can do, what can happen when you share. What's that? Small acts in the hands of a big God can make a big difference. And I probably put my own words in there, but you get the idea. Your small act can have great impact when God blesses it, and He will. So share and speak to us. Let us, encourage us. Lola Smith says, I love you. I love you, and I love the church. Glad to go to church. Enjoy being online. See people talking to each other. That's great. You get guys. Amanda's encouraging Chris. Sing it, Chris. Love you, brother. That's so good. So before COVID-19 sent us all to our rooms and told us not to come out for a while, we were in the John study. You guys remember the John study? Does it seem like it's been a year ago? It's been a long time ago. Some people tell me, they said, I wake up and I can't remember what day it is. Like, you're better than I am. I wake up, I don't know what month it is. I'm like, is this April? Is this May? Is this June? Like, I'm trying to work out what month it is. But we're in the John series, and still struggling to think about what month it is. But today we're getting back into it. And the title of the series, and I'm not big on titles. I don't work real hard on titles. I don't try to think about what's title. But this week I wanted to come up with the title that encapsulated the content today. And I want you to write this down. You may even add this into the comments, but I want you to write this title down. And the title is Adding Vision to Your Sight. Adding vision to your sight. Or we could say it like this: add some vision to what you see. How many of you know that just because you see something does not mean that you have vision? A visionary looks at what everyone else looks at and sees something different because they're not just looking, they are having vision. I love to be around visionaries. I mean, realistic visionaries, not someone who's just pie in the sky, just those things. I love people who can look at a problem and say, hey, here's how a solution, here's an opportunity in it. It's not dissing, it's not saying that there's not reality in it and it's not bad or this isn't terrible circumstances. I love someone who can come alongside and speak vision into the situation. And vision is simply just seeing what other people don't see. Vision is seeing beyond just what's there. I mean, you think about the things that get us stuck, the things that get us discouraged aren't just the things that we see, it's the things that we don't see. Where discouragement comes in, that's where we feel like we're stuck, is when you look at a situation and you don't see a way out. That would be hopeless. And when we are hopeless and we're discouraged, we don't see a way out. That means we don't see vision in what we're seeing. And so if we want to see a way out, we have to learn to add some vision to what we see. Again, it's not just what we see that gets us stuck, it's what we don't see. But when you add vision to what you see, it gives purpose, it gives power, and it can't stop your praise. It'll keep the praise going on just by adding vision. That's why Paul and Silas, they are in prison at midnight. I get the idea, their hands are chained, their feet are in stocks, and what are they doing at midnight? They're singing songs of hymns. They're praising God because they weren't limited just by what they saw. They had vision, and because they had vision, they had power. It didn't stop their praise. And Paul also writes a scripture, I think it's in Philippians 4, but he says, I have learned the secret. And it goes on, and I love what it says beyond that, but I love the fact that Paul's honest, that's saying I have learned, because anytime that I have learned something, it has taken me from being a starter to having a process of getting to where you've learned whatever it is. And he said, I have learned, and he says it's the secret of being content, whether well-fed or well-hungry, destitute, I've learned the secret. So Paul is showing us that there is moments where he was shipwrecked, he was hungry, he was naked, he was persecuted. But in that moment, for some reason, somehow, he was able to see something more in that moment than just what was there. He had vision. Therefore, he had learned the secret of being content. Paul is just adding vision to what he's seeing. I don't want... This whole week I was trying, how can I communicate this without people thinking that I'm minimizing what's going on or minimizing reality? We don't minimize reality. This thing is bad. I think we would all say, this is terrible. This week we've come alongside some of our church members. There's a time to mourn, there's a time to cry, there's a time to rally around and encourage. But I mean, sickness is bad. Maybe family members are sick, or maybe be in the hospital, even those that had people die because of it. That's bad. Unemployment, that's bad. That's tough. That puts a strain on the family. Scott, you're a small business owner. You know what that goes through. When we hear from our employees that praise that they're having to lay off, one employee told me, this is the worst day of my life, because they were going to have conversation with their employees to tell them. A single mom, they're going to have to go meet with a single mom and tell them they don't have a job. I'm not saying, I'm not minimizing that. All I am doing is I am maximizing who God is. We don't minimize our circumstances, but we don't stop. We have to bring God in the picture. If we don't, our circumstances will drive our life. But the moment that we begin to think about who God is and we begin to insert God into the picture, then it begins to encourage us. So we're in week 7 of the Gospel of John. I love John. I love reading John because John was Jesus', some have said his BFF, his best friend. He knows a whole lot. He's had intimate relations with Jesus as far as hearing conversations and being with him when other people weren't with him. He has an insider scoop. He's probably about 90 years old when he's writing this. He's thinking, how can I pass along everything that I experienced to the next generation? And we're that next generation that John's writing to. We're just simply journeying with John as John journeyed with Jesus. So we kind of get to hop on John's back and go along this journey of everything that he saw. He wants us to know the Jesus that he knew. That's why I like John so much, because it's like He's just revealing who Jesus is so that you will know that Jesus is the Son of God. He is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. So we wanted to go to John chapter 9, where John tells us about a man that's born blind, yet he had vision, but he couldn't see. I know it sounds confusing. And then he's also going to talk about a group of people that had sight, but they had no vision. So let's open that up. Let's see what God would speak to us today from John chapter 9. So verse 1, he starts out, he says, as he passed by, meaning as Jesus passed by, he saw a man born blind from birth. Get that? Notice that this man was born blind. And his disciples, Jesus' disciples, asked him, Rabbi, rabbi just means teacher, teacher, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So they are first assuming that there is a correlation here. There's a cause and effect, that he did something wrong or somebody did something wrong for him to be born blind. The question that they ask assumes that there's only two answers. Meaning that when we only think there's a certain limited amount of answers, that means that we are limited on our vision, because we can't get beyond what we think. We can't get beyond what we've always known. And what they say is, was he born blind? Did he do something wrong because he was born blind? Or was it his parents that did something wrong that caused him to be born blind? And Jesus gives a whole nother category. But you think about it, that's kind of a weird thing to say, what did he do? If he was born blind, what could he have done? I mean, he was in the womb. He was growing in the womb. What could he have done? And so there's been some commentators that say, well, maybe people believed in reincarnation, that he was in one life and he had done some bad things, and so he's coming back into another life and he's being punished for that. Who knows? And then there are, what about his parents? His parents did something wrong. Maybe why the baby was in the womb, he was in the womb. His mom went into a pagan temple. I don't know, did something wrong. But they are only assuming. They have limited vision. They have sight of what's going on, the disciples do, but they have limited vision about what the purpose is or what good can come out of this. And Jesus begins to give them another category. See, there has to be another category, because we all know that there are good people that experience bad things for no reason. And we know that there are bad people that experience good things for no reason. It just happens. So they say, did he sin or did they sin? Jesus answered, verse 3. It was not this man that sinned. It wasn't his parents that sinned, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. So what Jesus is doing, Jesus is dropping some vision into what they see. They don't have vision here, but Jesus is dropping that. And he says, and I quote, and this may even create a new category for us, or for some of you. He says, it happened that the works of God might be displayed, which teaches us that difficult times still have a purpose. Because Jesus said he was born so that the work of God may be displayed in his life. And Jesus knows this. Jesus knows that he's going to experience the worst thing. I mean, the worst thing happened to the best person when you talk about Jesus. He suffered more than anybody else, and he lived such a moral life. So sometimes God chooses to display his power on the stage of our suffering. And I don't shy away from that statement. I don't think we should shy away from that statement. Sometimes God will use the bad things in our life to bring glory to his name. And see, we've all experienced this on the other end. We've all experienced that I'm going to speak for myself. I have been encouraged, I have been inspired by someone else's response to pain. In fact, probably some of the greatest encouragement in my life comes from people who are suffering or bad things happen to them, but I see how they respond, how they still stay faithful, how they still encourage other people, how they still give, how they still get up and dress up and go about their day. It is their response to their pain that gives me hope. And it's God speaking through their response to me. They remain rock solid. Jesus goes on, he says, we must work the works of him who sent me while it's day, because night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of your world, or the world. Having said these things, Now, this is very unconventional. He said he spit on the ground. He just hocked something up, spit on the ground. He made mud with the saliva. And then he anoints the man's eyes with the mud. And he said to him, and how many know, if you're blind, it really doesn't matter. If this could possibly help, it doesn't matter. Whatever means that Jesus or God wants to use. And said to him, and he tells the man, go wash in the pool of Siloam. And that means, which means sent. So he went and washed and he came back seeing. So Jesus spits on the ground. And we don't have, we got, there's a lack of details here. We don't know if he said, tell the blind man, hey, blind man, I'm about to spit on the ground. Just want to let you know. I don't know, did Jesus tell him that? Did the disciples have to hold the blind man down? Did Jesus just say, whatever, he can't see what I'm doing anyway? But whatever it was, he spit on the ground, made some mud, put the solution on the man's eyes, and he said, go and wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. Now, he did it. And as I was reading it this week, what this tells me is this man, he couldn't see what was going on, but he still obeyed. So he couldn't see, but he had vision. He kind of had flipped what I'm talking about. He couldn't see, but he had vision because, what does he have to lose anyway? But he went and obeyed. And he came back seeing. He came back home seeing. And when he came back home, his neighbors were amazed and they were confused. Here's what John tells us about his neighbors. It says the neighbors, verse 8, and those who had seen him before as a beggar, they were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some would say, yeah, it's him. And others said, no, but it's his doppelganger. It's his twin. It looks like him. But he kept saying as they're arguing, it's me, it's me. It's funny because his neighbors, they're arguing, like they're arguing across the street at each other, and he's like standing in the middle of the street. He said, it's me. I was blind yesterday, but I can see now. Verse 10 says, so they said to him, then how were your eyes open? And he answers, and you're going to notice throughout this dialogue, this is how he answers so many of the times. He says, this man called Jesus, he made mud. He anointed my eyes. And he said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went, I washed. What did I have to lose? And I received my sight. And they said to him, where is he? And the blind man said, I don't know. When he put the mud on my eyes, I couldn't see. I don't know where he is. I haven't gone back to check him out. I just went, I washed, I came back home. I see you. You're arguing about, is it me or not? I don't know. It's just a man named Jesus. Verse 13, so they bring him to the Pharisees, this man who's formerly been blind. It was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. It was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again ask him how he received his sight. So he's going to tell the story again. He said, he put mud on my eyes. I washed and I see. And some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God. Now, this man's not from God. So they had sight, but they didn't have vision. They could see the circumstances that they couldn't believe outside their box. They couldn't go off their script because they knew exactly how God operated. And if God didn't operate how they thought he should operate, then it obviously couldn't be God. So this man's not from God. He does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, well, how can a man who's a sinner do signs? And there's division, there's contention among two groups now. This is where the background music changes, right? This is where it gets low and kind of sad, and it starts to build a little bit. The Pharisees are angry because Jesus is healed on the Sabbath. Again, they have a box. You have a box. I have a box. But would you allow God, if God got out of the box, him to get out of the box? Or would you say, no, God, this is how you always done things. You can't get out of your box. You get back in your box. And I'm not saying there's not a way God does things. I'm just saying sometimes by what we are taught, think that God can do anymore. This transcendent God that is way beyond anything. There's this all-powerful God that can do anything. This all-knowing God can't heal a blind man on a Sabbath day. They're going like, this man named Jesus isn't real. Just simply because they could see it, they couldn't have vision because it was out of their box. It was off of their script. So, Verse 17 says, so they said again to the blind man, what do you say about him since he opened his eyes? And he's like exasperated by now. He's like, he's a prophet, something. He's a good man. And the Jews did not believe that he had been born blind and received his sight until they called his parents. They called the parents of the man who received his sight and asked them, is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents, I can just imagine his parents going over, pulling back his ear, looking for that mole, looking behind his knee. You know, that mark, that birthmark, it's like trying to do a positive identification that this is their son. His parents answered, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age. He'll speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said to him, he's of age, ask him. In which he said, thanks, Mom. You know, Mom's just throwing him under the bus. Dad's throwing him under the bus because they don't want to get kicked out. So verse 24 says, so for the second time they call the man who's been born. And they said, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. And he answered. And preachers say that they have a favorite verse, and they say that about 10 verses in the Bible, that it's their favorite. This is one, I'll say this. This is one of my favorite conversations. And he answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. At one time I was blind, but now I see. Where has he come from? I don't know. Who is this man? His name's Jesus. Beyond that, I don't know anything else. Where is he? I don't know. All I know is I was once blind, but now I see. I don't have to know everything about him to trust him. I don't have to know everything about him, explain every detail about him and how he works to benefit from him. All I know is that at one time, let me just put it like this. Yesterday morning, I don't know much about it, but yesterday morning when I woke up, I had to fill around the house to get out the front door. And I had to have somebody help me to the place where I begged. And I was sitting there and I didn't see the people that dropped the money in my little jar. But that was yesterday. Today, I don't stumble around anymore. Today, I see the green that's on the trees. So I don't know. I can't answer everything about him. Here's all I know. I once was blind, but now I see. And there's things that's happened within me that no one ever could explain away and tell me that it wasn't God. And maybe you say, I once was addicted. I am not anymore. I once had a terrible attitude. I once was hateful. Now I'm learning to love. Once I was distanced from God. And now I feel like I'm moving closer to him. Once I was full of anxiety, and now God's granting me his peace. And these are the things that allow us to build our faith. So verse 26 says, and they said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered, I have told you already, and you wouldn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples? They reviled him, saying, you are his disciple, but we're a disciple of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses. For as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. And the man answered, why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. But if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard. Never since the world began. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. And I would say never had it been heard that anyone has been raised from the dead. That's our perspective. Then verse 33, if this man were not from God, then he could do nothing. And here's their response, and here's why they're responding. Here's what I want to draw your attention to. They could see, but they had no vision. And this is why they will respond this way. They answered him, you are born in utter sin, and would you teach us? and they cast him out. Now, wouldn't you think that if someone comes into our church and they are blind and they come up for prayer and one of our prayer team lays their hands on them and they walk away and they have sight. I mean, we give them a color test, we give them the number test, and they have sight. Don't you think that whether you agree with the method of them being healed, how they were healed, whatever it was, if you even didn't disagree with it, you could celebrate with the guy. The guy gets no celebration. They're all arguing. Is it him? It's me. I don't think it's him. Let's bring him to the Pharisees. Are you the man born blind? Yes, it's me. No one will celebrate. They just want to argue. How can this happen? And the reason why this is dictating their life, they can't be driven by, they're driven by only what they see. Now, if you add some vision to it, they would be able to get outside of their box, but because they don't have any vision, they're not adding vision to what they see. What they see is driving their life. So you have a man that has no sight, but he had vision while he was blind because he obeyed. Then you have a contingent of people who have sight, but they have no vision. They just could not believe. And one of the reasons why they couldn't believe is they knew too much. They were an expert. And I definitely think, or have seen many times, where we think we know everything about a topic means that we shut our ears off to anybody else speaking into it. It can't be anything different. We're not open to hearing from anybody else because we are the expert. Now, the problem isn't always in what we see. That's not only where the problem lies. We don't only get discouraged or stuck by what we see. The problem it comes when we don't see anything else. It comes from what we don't see. And when we don't see God in the picture, then our emotions in our lives will go in the direction of our circumstances, because our lives tend to go in the direction of what we gaze at, of what we stare at, of what we look at. And if there is no vision, if we don't add vision, then the only thing that we have is what we see. And our life goes in the direction of what we look at, of what we stare at. So if you don't have any vision in it, then the only thing that's going to drive you in the morning, the only thing that's going to drive you right now on a Sunday is what we see, whatever situation is. If it's good, we're going to be up. If it's bad, we're going to be down. Put some vision in it, you see a bigger God that transcends this, then it helps you transcend the situation. It doesn't minimize it. It doesn't say it's not real. It doesn't mean we don't cry, we don't suffer, we don't have weakness. It just means we're not hopeless, right? So this past year, I had the privilege, and I do say privilege, I love doing it, of being Ambry, my oldest daughter's driver's ed teacher. I mean, we spent months and hours and thousands of miles. Carlos kind of jumped in on the very end of it, taught her how to drive a stick shift. But I was able to drive with her. And we did a lot of this at nighttime because there's fewer people on the road. I thought it'd be wiser to do it at nighttime. And let me tell you what, when you do your child's driver ed dedication, help me out, education. I might need to dedicate her again. Education. Oh, we're having fun. It'll increase your prayer life. It'll bring you real close to God. I prayed so much during that time, but she did a great job. Amber, if you're watching this, you did a great job. I was so proud at how she did. But as we're driving, I thought, when she gets to be 40 years old, I want her to be asking certain questions while she's driving. I want her to be thinking of certain things. Over this course of time, it was a long time, I just started thinking of what are a few things that I could share with her that I hope that she would never forget, that one day may save her life. Or maybe just stop a very bad accident. So one of this, you come to a red light and it's red, and when it turns green, you got some people that just want to go immediately. Like it turns green, like my kids do this, it turns green and they're like, if I wait 1 nanosecond, they're like, go Dad. I'm like, what, you in a race or something? Are you in a hurry to get somewhere? It's like, go Dad. I said, so what I have seen sometimes is people go so fast when it turns green that someone runs a red light, a red light, and they broadside them. But if you would just waited a little bit, then it would have saved your life. So when it turns green, stop. That's what I tell you. When it turns green, stop and go slow. Look both ways and then go slow. So just when it turns green, and then go. The other thing was when you're at an intersection and you have someone coming this way. Let me turn. You got me, EJ? So you go on an intersection, you got a car coming this way, and they got a blinker on like they're going to turn in front of you. Don't trust the blinker. How many of us had someone coming like that, they had their blinker on, but they never turned? So you get broadside. So I'm just trying to think of things that when you're 40 years old, what could possibly save your life? Don't trust the blinker. Stop on those type things. But we live on a road that's dark, very dark at night, and there's a bend to it. And when you come around that bend, there's sometimes cars come around with their brights on. And if you stare at the brights, you have a tendency to steer towards the brights because we steer towards what we stare at. So I was telling her, Ambry, when we go and the brights are on, don't look at the lights. Look at the road. Look to where you want to be driving. Don't look at the lights, because if you look at the lights, you're going to tend, right? You're like, how many's done that? Or we're turning like this and we've gone this way, because we tend to steer towards where we stare. If you don't have vision, we all experience tough times. In our tough times, our emotions are going to go in the direction of what we're thinking, of what we're staring at, what we're meditating on. I'm not saying deny what's happening. We have to be honest about what's going on. But we've got a God that can come in the situation as well. But God, He is able. He is there. We do that, then what you don't have just the situation. You have a big God in the situation that you're staring at. You'll go in the direction of your stare. You'll still wake up and say, it may be a difficult day, but I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Greater is He that's within me than he that's in the world. You'll start speaking life and speaking encouragement into your situation. If you don't add vision into the situation, all you have to drive you is what's there. I want to give you one more illustration, because we all have been, I would think that we've all been repairing things in the past 7 weeks. I repaired more things in the past 7 weeks than I've repaired in the past 7 years. And they're not emergency things, and that's why they've been disrepaired, because if it's not an emergency in my house, why do I need to fix it? I'm relying on it. So it's things like a lawnmower, a scooter, the brake of the front tire. We can always use the back tire brake. We don't need the front tire brake. So just having to figure this out. So I've got this push mower that when it would run out of gas, even though I'd fill it back up with gas, it wouldn't start again. I'd prime it, it wouldn't start again. And I'd have to spray this stuff in the carburetor, right, to get it started again. Then it would go for a little bit and then it'd stop again. I couldn't get it started. It was just super frustrating, but it's not an emergency, so why fix it? So I decided that during this, let's just fix the lawnmower. I got time to do it. So I learned what a carburetor was. And this is a carburetor. This is the bowl of the carburetor. Let's go over here. This is the bowl of the carburetor. And the reason why I know this is carburetor is because that's what the internet told me. So this is carburetor. So I was going to take the carburetor, take it apart, make sure all the ports are good, the holes are good. But there's another part that comes on the carburetor, and it was called a diaphragm assembly. And this diaphragm assembly has this wire, and it connects to one of these, and it turns this wire. So I had to take the diaphragm assembly off, but when I was taking the diaphragm assembly off, which had a hose to it, if you can get a good shot, there's a hose right here. It had this hose to it. So when I took the hose off, and this is the story of my life, I broke the port. So now I have to buy a new diaphragm assembly. That's the story of my life. I try to fix something, I break something else, and I'm in a bigger hole. So now I have to. So what I do is I pull this tube off. It's still connected to the engine, and I just leave it and say, well, there's nothing wrong with this tube, so I'm just going to leave it on. And so I order the diaphragm assembly, and it takes about a week or so to get in. Its delivery is a little bit slower now. And so when it comes in, I've already forgotten how to put this thing back together. When it comes in, it comes with a new hose that's connected to the diaphragm assembly. So I assemble this to the carburetor, but now I've got a big problem because I've got two hoses. Are you guys following me? Because I've got the old one, and now I've got the new one, and I don't have two ports. I'm looking all over the engine. I'm like going, oh my goodness, where does these two things fit? There's not two ports. Because all I had to do is take the old hose off and then just attach the new one to where the old one was. But because I had two coming out, it gave me the impression that they needed to go somewhere. But there was nowhere for it to go. And so I sat there, I pulled up a cooler. I was sitting on the cooler. I was looking underneath the carburetor. I was looking all over there. For over an hour, I am upset. I am frustrated because what I see, what I stare at is what's causing my emotions. I'm like, I don't know. I'm stupid. That's what I'm stupid. I don't know how to put this thing back together, and I tore it apart. So I call a mechanic friend of mine that's in my small group. It's good to be in a small group because it comes in benefits in a lot of different ways. I called Joey. I said, Joey, I've got a problem. Can you FaceTime me? Yeah. So we're FaceTime. Say, here's my problem. I've got two hoses, but I don't have two ports. I don't know where the ports are. Where are the ports? See, I'm thinking, I don't have enough vision in the moment to think outside of what my mind has just got me in this rut. All I need to do is think, oh, there's no way. It's not two ports. This thing can't happen. So he looks at it. He says, I've never seen anything like it. I'm so confused. I had a mechanic confused because I introduced my presupposition that there had to be two ports. He said, I don't know. Give me 5 minutes. I'll call a mechanic friend. He calls a mechanic friend. They're scratching their heads, man. They don't know what's going on. I'm in my little work shed just throwing tools all over the place. It was not a good moment. I was so frustrated. He don't know what's going on. I'll come over tomorrow. Tomorrow was Saturday. He said, can I come over at 7 a.m.? I was like, God doesn't get up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, Joey. No, yeah, come over. I don't care. He comes over. And the thing that I knew would happen, happened. He's there. He's looking at it. Let me get right here at the camera. He's looking at it. And I said, he's like, I don't know. I can't find these two ports where they go. We're looking for two ports that don't exist. He's looking at it. He said, I don't know. I said, oh my God, Joey. I knew this was going to happen. I'm going to get you to come 30 minutes from your house early on a Saturday morning, and I'm going to look at it, and within 5 minutes, I'm going to see what the problem is. I said, Joey, we're so stupid. I said, I didn't take the old hose off. I took the old hose and I took the new hose and I put it where the old hose was. And he said, solution, see you later, Rick. I got to go. But the problem was I couldn't get out because sometimes we get in a situation and we stare at it so often and we get in a rut that we can't see anything. And that drives us. I'm just saying sometimes we have to lead ourselves to say maybe what we're seeing isn't all that we need to be seeing. We just need to add some vision to our sight. Look, this isn't just going to be for this moment now. This is going to be for the rest of our life. That maybe God is doing something greater. And we know this to be true because now we can look back on something bad that happened 5 years ago and we can go, oh, wow, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have grown. If that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And now with 2020 sight is perfect. We can see it and we can go, wow, something good. So why can't we say now when we're facing struggle and trials that no, I would rather not be in this situation, but I believe that God can make good out of bad things. I mean, if you've got enemies ahead of you and a Red Sea in front of you, you've got to have vision if you're going to be victorious. Because it looks like there's no way out. If you're Nehemiah in Babylon and your city is burned down, Jerusalem is burned down, how many know as a leader, you have to have vision to have hope? If you're Gideon and an angel of the Lord shows up and says, hello, mighty man of valor, if you're going to believe that, you have to have vision because all we see is ourselves and we know our history. To add vision. You have to add vision to your sight. When you're pressed on every side, you have to add vision to stay encouraged. When you pray for another way, but God says no, you have to add vision so that you can lead your own heart. Just like Jesus did, he prayed. If there's another way, let this pass. When there's a giant ahead of you, like call him Goliath, and everybody else is scared, you have to have vision to go towards him and not away from him. Because only sight is going to cause you to run away. And I'm just telling you, and I pray, Scott, because here's the thing about us who preach. Can we live up to what we preach? Because I know it's coming. It's just life. But I also know God. And I hope that in the moment, what I stare at isn't just the problem, isn't just the hopelessness, but that I have enough God inside of me at the moment to say, oh, but God is still good. I know this isn't what I want, but God is still faithful. He is still able. And if he doesn't, I'm still going to serve him. That's by adding vision. Add some vision. Add some vision. Add some vision. You put that in the chat. Add some vision to your sight. What is it right now that you need to add vision to right now? What's something that's driving you, that's discouraging, that's anxiety filled? What is something right now that you need to add some vision to? Just think God. Transcendent God. Let's pray together. Close this out. God, we don't want anything that we look at on this life to obscure who you are, to obscure your ability. So God, may we not be limited. May we not just stare at what's right in front of us, but can we see a bigger picture? Can we enter you into the frame so that our life would be informed by that? God, thank you. You never leave us. You never forsake us. Thank you so much that you're with us and that you do work all things together for good to those who love the Lord. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Everybody said, amen.